if you look at, hey, we're gonna buy, 525,000, bill at various, intervals, which, is about 3.15, and then leaves us about 750,000, as working capital to, support our needs over the next 12 months. So really, the conversation around with the finance committee is, the amount. Are we comfortable with that amount? And are we comfortable with the, taking our excess cash, if you will, and using a T-bill as our investment option? So I'd leave it up to you guys on the committee to, we could have an open dialogue if there's, comments about the amount, too much, not enough, anything else that you may have questions on.
T-bill is the safest.
So let's talk about that. It's a good question, right? So T-bills are investments in the U.S. government. If the U.S. government fails, could we have exposure? Yeah. Right? Now, the likelihood of that happening, and I don't know, the smarter people than me in this room, I don't know what that looks like. But there's certainly that aspect of it, where there is, you can't say there's no risk, right? I think that would be foolish to say there's absolutely zero risk. There is, from the other side of that, so that gives us the greatest return, greatest, maturity or yield, of what our options are. On the other side to that, if we decide to do nothing, we're still getting 3% on
our sweep account,
on our checking and say yes.
Yeah.
So, I
was gonna ask.
It's 3%.
On budget, we're doing pretty good on the interest income.
Yeah.
Much higher than budgeted.
Yeah, because we really didn't budget for
We didn't
one.
budget for anything, and we've got
Right.
almost 25,000 here today.
Right. Yeah, so we're at 3% if we do nothing. But then you would say, okay, let's talk about the risk with leaving it in a traditional, sweep, cash, checking, money market, whatever accounts, that it's with M&T, right? If, in this current environment that we're in, could something happen to M&T? Of course, any other bank it could happen with,
Yeah, any bank.
right? So is there risk there if, something ever happens to M&T? For sure. Our deposits collateralized here? Yeah. So that's, in our environment, we have, all of our deposits are collateralized, right? So which means that anything in excess of the FDIC limit, that excess amount is collateralized by securities. I believe our excess is collateralized by Bank of New York Mellon. Okay, so let's say we have $1 million in our checking account, 250s, it's based on the type of account, but let's say we have 750,000 that is uninsured by the FDIC. M&T has to have our excess collateralized by securities, and they do that through Bank of New York Mellon. And we get a report of that. Basically, we don't get it, but we can, every single day, what our percent is backed, and it's usually we're about 101 to 102% of that excess is backed by securities. So from that standpoint, you would say, well, geez, without knowing, then you got to peel that onion back a little bit further. What are those underlying securities? But just so you understand, we're doing everything we can to minimize risk that we may have. I don't believe it's significant, but to say it's zero, I think is not accurate either, right? There is a little bit of risk in maybe even in either scenario.
The amount that you established for investment, was there any rhyme or reason to that, Greg, or any formula, or just you thought that would be good for us? Did you pick an amount of cash that we should probably have for operating and a multiplier or anything, or did you just kind of say, this seems like a good number?
Yeah, I think if you looked at, that's why I think the forecast is important, right, that says, okay, hey, worst case scenario, right, we're gonna need about $700,000 for the next 12 months of cash, right? 671,000, right, over the next 12 months.
Yep.
If you add a little bit of a buffer in there, right, and say round it up to 750, we feel that, we can take that excess cash that we don't need and get a greater return that we're currently getting. In addition to that, every 3 months, we're gonna have the chance to
Exactly.
to say yes or no to either rebuy those treasuries or say, hey, you wanna know what? We have something coming up, or the revenue's not as high or expenses are greater, that we're going to not repurchase those treasuries and roll that into our cash. And again, the delta there, call it
2%.
2%.
So,
Just say
yeah, so
2%
the-
ball.
Right, so we're trying to get that little greater 2%. And so that's where I think that delta is if we don't do that.
sweep account is 3% and the T-bill is 5%, right?
5, varying from 5.07 to 5.34 at different times, yeah. And those obviously change, but just so you can get a flavor for it.
Hey,
Can I
Greg,
ask
this is Ryan. I have a
Maybe a
quick
simple
question.
This is $3.15 million that we're proposing investing in T-bills?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yep.
And to create a $750,000 cash buffer through January of 2025?
Well, the 750 is the amount that we're not investing.
Right, but that's the cash buffer that we're
Yeah.
getting out of the maturity, the yields?
No, that's the amount we're gonna leave in our operating accounts.
Okay.
The 3 million we're gonna invest into the T-bills that are gonna return us
I see.
5%.
Okay, I
Greg.
misread that
Yeah.
to read that, we're creating a buffer to make up for
No.
what we're losing.
No, that's 750
Yields.
and that 671 is really what we're
I
trying to.
see.
All right, Jeff, you gotta push this scenario. So what is it? We'll go back to the board and tell them what? That we approve this? You think that it's good for us?
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah, I mean, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense, especially where you've got the ladder of the maturity.
Yeah.
That way, if things went
It's-
south, we'd be
It's
able.
very conservative, and
It's
it
a-
allows us that cushion to get back.
Yeah, so I think if it did by January, if it wasn't going well, just don't reinvest it, and I think that's a smart way to handle it, so.
So we make the motion and, goes forward to the board and we let the board pull the knives out in hours, so, right?
If
That's how it goes, right?
if they do, yeah, if they
I
do.
mean, they might have some concerns. and so-
Ryan, you listened to the conversation, do you have any input?
Yeah, I had a,
Hold on. Can't hear you, Ryan.
I know, we're working on this.
I heard him, he said he agrees.
Raise his hand, right?
it's funny, I do this for a living, every day, so I have a few thoughts there. I think the treasury option's a great idea there.
There we go, hold on one second, Ryan. Let me just turn this on, hold on.
We can't hear
I
you.
can't hear you. It's our equipment. Okay, now try
Blink,
talking.
blink your left eye for yes, right eye for no. There you go.
Sort of, not yet, not
Well,
really.
I wish I had not asked your opinion, Ryan.
Guess we should all learn sign language.
Something's wrong with this
Hold on, there you go.
thing here.
Okay, try it. Say something.
Okay, can you hear me?
No?
Oh, wait, yeah, okay, good.
Oh, you can go over there.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we did it.
All right.
We did it.
I just wanted to clarify two things. I think I heard this, but you're buying individual treasury notes, right? Not like a money market fund that holds treasury notes themselves.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. And yeah, no, I think, obviously they just raised the debt ceiling, so the government, if they were going to default, they would have done it in June, but they didn't. So that's a different argument, but, it is the risk-free rate and should be the safest form, and the short-term yields are unbelievable right now in the treasury market. One question about our investment policy: do we have the option of putting it in bank CDs or insured? Buying a 250 of a various
Yeah,
bank CDs?
yes.
Okay. Because those have become more popular recently in the sense that you could do it's like what's called a seeder, where, and some of the bankers may know this, but you can basically say you put $5 million in and it gets broken out into however many banks that are all FDI, every chunk of it's FDIC insured, but you're also could be putting your money in the next Silicon Valley Bank, in that case, which would be insured, but it might be a problem if you ever had to get your money back or take time. So treasuries are much more liquid and, I think the safest move.
Yeah, I think this is conservative, but does get us a little bit extra bump, Greg. So I think it's a good plan. So
So
do
what's
we
the
need a
motion?
motion to,
Yeah, what's the motion?
I think it's a motion to recommend to the full board for consideration the approval of the investment plan, as detailed by Greg.
I'll move that.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do you have that written
You
down
got
so
that
that I
written
can
down?
use it?
Yeah, I got half of it.
Yeah. Barry went fast, I got two
Sorry.
words.
To set.
Yep.
Okay.
Good research on that, Greg.
Yeah, it's a great plan, Greg.
Yeah.
Very similar to a couple I've seen from some of our customers at the bank.
Yeah.
This is what they're strategizing to do, so.
Good.
I'm gonna make sure that rumor that we're paying you for nothing gets out of here.
I haven't seen my sandwich yet.
Is there anything else on the investment options and amount that we need to discuss, Greg, or is that it? Okay. Other businesses? Tony, Anna, any other business that we've got, or,
Not at this time.
okay? Motion to adjourn, I guess.
I'll move.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.